I drove 6 hours to bury my grandmother, thinking the funeral would be the hardest part. Then I pulled into the driveway of the house she promised me since I was 7. My key refused to turn. The locks were shiny and new. A stranger opened the door and told me the property closed last week. My sister had not just stolen my inheritance, she had already sold it to the highest bidder. The salt air usually cleared my head, but today it felt heavy, sticking to my skin like a second layer of grief. I had driven 6 hours from New York City to Rockport, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, rehearsing the eulogy I would never actually deliver because my mother had insisted on doing it herself. But the eulogy was not the only reason I had come back. There was the house, Grandma Edith's house. It was a sprawling Victorian on the edge of the cliff, painted a soft, weathering yellow that seemed to glow even under the gray Massachusetts sky. It was the only place in the world where I had ever felt safe. When our father left and our mother fell apart, Grandma took us in. She gave me the attic room with the window seat, and she promised me, over and over, that one day the deed would bear my name. It will be yours, Gabriella, she had said, pressing her cool hand against my cheek just 3 days before she died. My legacy to you. I turned onto the gravel driveway, expecting silence. I expected to see the curtains drawn and the porch swing empty, waiting for me to breathe life back into it. Instead, I saw a white van. It was parked aggressively close to the front steps, blocking the path. The side of the van read Hawthorne Ridge Renovations in bold, aggressive block letters. My stomach dropped. A physical sensation like missing a step on a steep staircase. I parked my car and got out. The wind whipped my hair across my face as I walked toward the front door. I fished my keyring from my purse, my fingers trembling slightly. This was just a mistake. Maybe Mom hired someone to fix the roof before the memorial. That had to be it. I slid my key into the lock. It stopped halfway. I jiggled it. I pulled it back and tried again, shoving it harder this time. Metal scraped against metal, harsh and unforgiving. The lock was new. It was a shiny brushed nickel deadbolt that looked alien against the aged wood of the door. "Hey!" The voice came from the side of the house. A man in dusty work clothes walked around the corner, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked at me with the weary annoyance of someone who had been interrupted too many times. "Can I help you?" he asked. "This is private property." I stared at him, my key still jammed halfway into the lock. "I am Gabriella Brooks. This is my grandmother's house. I am here for the funeral." "Who are you?" He frowned. Tossing the rag into the open back of the van, he pulled a clipboard from the dashboard. "Look, lady, I don't know about any funeral. We just started demo this morning." "Demo?" The word came out of my throat like a shard of glass. "What are you talking about?" "Demolition, renovation, whatever the new owner wants." He checked a sheet on his clipboard. "We got the work order yesterday. Property closed last week." The world tilted. The gray sky and the yellow house and the white vans smeared together for a second. "Closed?" I repeated, my voice sounding thin and far away. "That is impossible. My grandmother died 10 days ago. The will has not even been through probate." The man shrugged, not unkindly, but with the indifference of someone who got paid regardless of the drama. "Look, I just drive the nail gun. You got a problem. You call the owner. Here." He reached into the van and grabbed a glossy flyer, shoving it into my hand. It was a promotional piece for Hawthorne Ridge Renovations. Underneath the logo, it said, "We buy homes for cash, fast closings, no questions asked." I stared at the paper. The ink looked wet in the damp air. "I need you to leave," I said, my voice shaking. "You are trespassing." He laughed, a short, dry bark. "Lady, I have got a key. You don't. Now please, step off the porch before you get hurt. Liability, you know?" I backed away. I had to back away because if I stayed, I was going to scream, and I knew that if I started screaming, I might never stop. I retreated to my car, the gravel crunching loudly under my boots, and slammed the door. The interior was silent, sealed off from the wind. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I had to tap the contact name twice. "Lauren, My sister answered on the second ring. Her voice was light, airy, the voice she used when she was pretending everything was perfect. Gabby, you made it. Mom and I were just wondering if you hit traffic. We are at the flower shop picking out the lilies for the altar. Lauren, I cut her off. I am at the house. There was a pause. A silence so thick I could hear the static on the line. Then, her tone shifted. It dropped an octave, becoming smooth and solicitous. Oh, you went straight there? We thought you would come to the hotel first. Why is there a contractor here? I asked, gripping the phone. Why are the locks changed? He said the house was sold. Lauren, he said it closed last week. I heard a sigh, the kind you give a tired toddler. Gabriella, honey, take a breath. You are upset. I am not upset, I shouted, hitting the steering wheel with my free hand. I am standing in front of Grandma's house and a stranger just told me it is not ours anymore. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Lauren said, her voice dripping with rehearsed patience. We did this, remember? We talked about this months ago. You said you didn't want the burden of the upkeep. You live in the city. You are busy with your career. You agreed it was best to liquidate the assets so we could pay off Grandma's medical bills. I felt the blood drain from my face. I never said that. I whispered it first, then said it louder. I never said that. I have never agreed to sell this house. Grandma promised it to me. Gabby, please, Lauren said. You are grieving. Grief does funny things to your memory. You signed the power of attorney in August. Don't you remember? You sent it back via overnight mail. August. I cast my mind back to August. I was working 80-hour weeks on the merger deal. I barely slept, but I would have remembered signing away my inheritance. I would have remembered signing away the only home that mattered. I did not sign anything. I said, my voice low and dangerous. Then I heard a rustling sound, and my mother's voice came on the line. Gabriella? Mom, tell me this is a joke. Tell me Lauren is lying. Gabriella, stop it, my mother snapped. She did not sound sad. She sounded annoyed. We are burying your grandmother tomorrow. This is not the time to stir up drama. Lauren handled the estate because you were too busy to come visit. You should be grateful she took the load off your shoulders. Grateful? I choked out. She sold the house. It had to be done. Mom said, now, come to the hotel, wash your face, put on a dress, and stop making a scene. We will not discuss this again. The line went dead. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone screen until it went black. The contractor was watching me from the porch. Leaning on his hammer, he looked like he was waiting for me to leave so he could get back to destroying my childhood. I started the car. I did not go to the hotel. I did not go to the flower shop. I drove straight to the county seat, 20 miles inland. The Hall of Records was a brick building that smelled of floor wax and decaying paper. It was a place of facts, of stamps and signatures and indisputable truths. I needed a truth, because for the last 10 minutes, my family had been trying to rewrite my reality. I walked up to the clerk's window. I need to see the deed transfer for 44 Ocean View Drive. The clerk, a woman with glasses on a chain around her neck, looked up over her spectacles. Are you the owner? I was supposed to be, I said. She typed something into her computer. That property transferred 6 days ago. Let me pull the image. She hit a button, and a printer in the corner whirred to life. She grabbed the warm sheets of paper and slid them across the counter to me. There it was, a warranty deed. Grantor, Edith Marie Brooks. Grantee, Hawthorne Ridge Renovations, LLC. My eyes scanned down the page. There, at the bottom, was a signature. Edith Marie Brooks. The handwriting was shaky, spider-thin. It looked like hers, but weak, and below it, a witness signature. Gabriella Brooks. I stared at my own name. It was typed neatly under a signature that looked terrifyingly like mine. The loop of the G was slightly too wide, the slant of the B a little too sharp, but to anyone else, to a stranger, to a judge, it would look authentic. I felt a wave of nausea. I had not signed this. I had never seen this document in my life. I looked at the date next to the signature. October 14th, I froze. October 14th. I closed my eyes, forcing my brain to work through the panic. October 14th. Where was I? I pulled out my phone and opened my calendar. Scrolling back. October 14th. Chicago. Tech conference. Keynote speech. I had been 800 miles away. I had photos of myself on stage. I had a plane ticket receipt. I had a hotel bill. I looked back at the document. Next to the signatures was a notary stamp. Authorized notary. Stephen Miller. Commission expires 2028. The stamp had an address. The Pack and Ship Station. 12 Main Street. Rockport, Massachusetts. I had not been in Rockport on October 14th. I had not been in a Pack and Ship station. I paid for the copies. My hands numb as I handed over my credit card. I folded the documents carefully and put them in my purse. It felt like I was carrying a bomb. I walked out of the records office and into the cold afternoon air. My phone buzzed again. It was Lauren, then Mom, then Lauren again. I ignored them all. I was not ready to talk to them. Not until I knew exactly how deep this lie went. I needed coffee, and I needed to think. I drove to a diner on the outskirts of town, a place called the Salty Dog where Grandma used to take me for pancakes when I was little. It hadn't changed much. The vinyl booths were taped with duct tape, and the air smelled of bacon grease and burnt coffee. I slid into a booth in the back and ordered a black coffee. When the waitress came back with the mug, she paused. Gabby? Gabby Brooks? I looked up. It was Martha Higgins. She had been one of Grandma's bridge partners for 30 years. She looked older, her hair thinner, but her eyes were the same sharp blue. Martha, I said, managing a weak smile. It is good to see you. I am so sorry about Edith, she said, putting a hand on my shoulder. She was a good woman. We are all going to miss her. Thank you, I said. It has been hard. She hesitated, wiping her hands on her apron. I was surprised to see the sold sign go up so fast. I drove by there yesterday. That sister of yours does not waste any time. Does she? I took a sip of coffee to hide the grimace. No, she does not. Martha lowered her voice, leaning in closer. You know, it was funny. I saw Lauren about 3 weeks ago, before Edith passed. 3 weeks ago? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Yes, she was sitting right in this booth. Actually, she was meeting with that man, the one who runs the title office over in Essex. Short guy, nervous-looking. They had papers spread out all over the table. I went to say hello, but they looked so serious I didn't want to interrupt. I just assumed they were getting things in order for the end. But Edith was still lucid then, wasn't she? My heart hammered against my ribs. 3 weeks ago, Grandma was alive. She was weak, but she was awake. She was talking. I said. Martha shook her head. Well, Lauren looked like she was on a mission. She was doing a lot of talking, and that little man was just nodding and stamping things. Stamping things. Martha, I said, reaching out and touching her arm. This is important. Do you remember the man's name? She frowned, thinking, I think his name is Pritchett, or Pritchard, something like that. He has an office next to the laundromat in Essex. Thank you, I said. You have no idea how helpful that is. I finished my coffee in 2 gulps, left a $20 bill on the table, and walked out. I did not go to the hotel. I did not go to the family dinner that I knew was being prepared at my mother's house. I sat in my car and searched for lawyers. I skipped the big firms with the billboards on the highway. I wanted someone local, someone who knew the players, someone who wouldn't be afraid of a property dispute. I found a name with 3 reviews, all 5 stars, all mentioning that he was stubborn. Daniel Mercer, attorney at law. His office was in a converted house near the harbor. The sign out front was peeling slightly. I walked in without an appointment. The receptionist was an empty chair. A voice called out from the back room. If you are selling insurance, I am not interested. I am not selling anything. I called back. I need to hire you. A man appeared in the doorway. He was in his late 40s, wearing a dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up and a tie that had been loosened hours ago. He had tired eyes and graying hair. and he looked like he lived on caffeine and skepticism. He looked me up and down. "You look like you just saw a ghost," he said. "I saw a signature." I said, "Come on in." I sat in his office, which was piled high with manila folders. I laid everything out on his desk: the flyer from the contractor, the copy of the deed I had pulled from the records office, my flight records from Chicago. I told him everything. I told him about the promise Grandma made. I told him about the contractor. I told him about the phone call with Lauren and the gaslighting from my mother. I told him about Martha seeing Lauren with the title guy 3 weeks ago. Daniel Mercer didn't say a word for 10 minutes. He just listened, his eyes moving back and forth between the documents. He picked up the deed and held it up to the light. He traced the signature with his finger. Then, he went very still. The casual, tired energy vanished. He sat up straighter. The air in the room seemed to change, becoming sharper, colder. He looked at the notary stamp. He looked at the date. He put the paper down and looked at me. His expression was not the confident look of a lawyer who sees an easy payday. It was the look of a man who just heard a floorboard creak in an empty house. "Ms. Brooks," he said quietly, "you came here expecting to file a fraud claim. You think your sister forged a signature to get a quick sale." "Yes," I said. "That is exactly what she did." "No," Daniel said. He leaned forward, clasping his hands on the desk. "If she just wanted to sell the house, she would have waited for probate. She is the executor, isn't she?" I nodded. "She could have sold it legally in 6 months," he said. "Even if you fought her, she could have forced a sale eventually if the will was vague. But she didn't wait. She forged a deed transfer before probate even opened. She risked a felony to move the title immediately." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means she wasn't trying to sell the house for the money," Daniel said. "She was trying to destroy the evidence of ownership. She needed that house out of the estate's name before anyone looked closely at the will." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the darkening street. "I need to ask you a question, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer." I waited. "Did your grandmother ever mention a second envelope? Or a letter she did not want your family to see?" I stared at him. "A second envelope?" "Why?" I asked. "Because," Daniel said, turning back to face me, his face grim, "the timeline doesn't add up for a simple theft. People steal for greed. Ms. Brooks? But this feels like panic. Your sister isn't just greedy, she is scared, and I want to know what she is scared of." The question hung in the air between us, heavy and terrifying. I thought about Grandma's last days, her whispering to me when Lauren left the room, her eyes darting to the door. "It will be yours, Gabriella. You have to make sure." I realized then that I wasn't just fighting for a house. I was stepping into a war I didn't understand, against the people who were supposed to love me. "I don't know about an envelope," I said, my voice steady for the first time all day. "But I am going to find out." Daniel nodded once. "Okay then. Do not go to that funeral dinner. Do not talk to your sister. Go to a hotel in the next town over. Lock your door. We start digging in the morning." I stood up, shaking his hand. His grip was firm. "Welcome to the fight," he said. I walked out into the night. The wind was howling now, coming off the ocean like a scream. I got into my car and drove away from Rockport, away from the yellow house, away from my family. I checked into a Motel 6 in Gloucester, deadbolted the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. I looked at my phone. 12 missed calls from Lauren. I turned it off. The house was gone. The trust was gone. But as I sat there in the dark, listening to the hum of the heater, I felt something else rising up to take its place. A cold, hard rage. They thought I would roll over. They thought I would cry and sign their papers and go back to my city life. They thought I was the little sister who could be bullied into silence. They were wrong. I lay down, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, and I made a promise to the ghost of Edith Brooks. I was going to burn their whole world down, brick by brick. The next morning, the air in Daniel Mercer's office was stale, smelling of old coffee and older law books. Outside, the coastal fog was thick, erasing the harbor from view. making the world feel small and claustrophobic. I sat in a wooden chair that creaked every time I shifted my weight, watching Daniel pace back and forth in front of a whiteboard covered in scribbled dates. He stopped and tapped the marker against a date. October 14th. "You are certain?" he asked, not looking at me. I pulled the folder from my bag and slid the printed itinerary across the desk. I was in Chicago. "Daniel, here's the hotel receipt. Here's the Uber history showing a ride from O'Hare to the Palmer House Hilton. Here is a time-stamped photo of me on stage giving a keynote on supply chain logistics. Unless I have a body double, I was not in Massachusetts signing a deed." Daniel picked up the photo, studied it for a long moment, and then tossed it back onto the desk. He did not look relieved. He looked disturbed. He sat down, lacing his fingers together. "Gabriella, I need you to understand how property law works in this state," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "If your grandmother's will left the house to you, that property enters what we call the probate estate immediately upon her death. To sell it, the executor, your sister, would need permission from the probate court. She would need to notify all beneficiaries. That includes you." I nodded. "I know. That is why I'm here." "She skipped that step." "It is worse than skipping a step," Daniel said. He leaned forward. "To bypass probate entirely, the title has to transfer before death. That is what this deed purports to do. It claims you and your grandmother signed the house over to this LLC 3 weeks before she died. If that were true, the house was never part of the estate. It was already gone." He paused, letting the weight of that sink in. "But here's the thing," he continued. "To pull this off, they needed 2 things. They needed your grandmother's signature, which might be genuine if she was confused or coerced, and they needed your signature, because your name was already on the title as a future interest holder. A remainder man. Did you know that?" I blinked. "No. Your grandmother added you to the deed 5 years ago." Daniel said, "A life estate for her. Remainder to you. She wanted to make sure this house was yours no matter what happened with the will. She was protecting you, Gabriella." I felt a lump form in my throat. She had never told me. She just did it. "So," Daniel said, his voice hardening, "for Lauren to sell this house, she needed you to sign off on your rights. She could not sell it without you. And since you were in Chicago, someone sat in a room, looked a notary in the eye, pretended to be you, and forged your signature. And that notary stamped it." He sat back, the leather of his chair groaning. "This is not a dispute, Gabriella. This is not a family spat about who gets the china. This is organized fraud. It is a felony, and it requires coordination. A notary does not just accidentally stamp a forged signature for a person who is not in the room, not unless they are incompetent or they are paid." He looked at me, his eyes sharp. "I want you to stay away from your family. Do not confront them. Do not call your sister. If they know we are on to the forgery, they might try to destroy evidence. We need to move quietly." I heard him. I understood the logic. But the rage that had kept me warm in that motel room all night was demanding an outlet. "I cannot just sit here." "Daniel," I said, "I have to do something." "Then go find the notary," he said. "But be careful. If this is what I think it is, these people are not just sloppy. They are desperate." The address on the notary stamp led me to a strip mall on the edge of town, sandwiched between a discount liquor store and a nail salon. The sign above the door said, "The Pack and Ship Station," in fading red letters. I walked in. A bell jingled violently above the door. The air inside was hot and smelled of packing tape and cardboard dust. The shelves were cluttered with padded envelopes and boxes of bubble wrap. Behind the counter stood a man who looked like he had been sleeping in his clothes. He was balding, with a sheen of sweat on his forehead, despite the air conditioning humming loudly in the window. "Can I help you?" he asked, not looking up from a stack of shipping labels he was sorting. I pulled the copy of the deed from my purse and placed it on the counter. Right on top of his labels, "I am looking for Stephen Miller." I said. The man's hand froze. He stared at the name on the document for a fraction of a second too long before looking up at me. His eyes darted to the door, then back to me. Steve? He doesn't work here anymore. Really? I asked, keeping my voice level, because this document was notarized 10 days ago. He was working here then. The man pulled the labels out from under my paper and started stacking them again. His movements jerky. Yeah, well, he quit, moved to Florida, or maybe Arizona. I don't keep track of ex-employees. I need to see his logbook. I said, by law, a notary has to keep a journal of every signature they witness. I want to see the entry for October 14th. The man laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. Lady, I can't show you that. That is private information, client confidentiality. It is a public record. I snapped. And that is my name on the document. Someone forged my signature in this shop. And Stephen Miller stamped it. Now, show me the book, or I call the police and we can wait for them to get a warrant. The man's face went pale. He leaned over the counter, his voice dropping to a hiss. Look, I don't know who you are, but you need to leave. I don't have the book. Steve took it with him. That is illegal. I said, I don't care, he shouted. Stepping back. Get out. We are closed. He came around the counter and marched to the door. Holding it open, his hands were shaking. Go, he yelled. And if you have questions about that deed, maybe you should go talk to your sister. I stopped on the threshold. I never mentioned my sister. The man's eyes widened. He realized his mistake instantly. He slammed the door in my face and flipped the deadbolt. I stood there on the sidewalk, watching him flip the sign to closed and retreat into the back room. My heart was hammering against my ribs. He knew. He knew Lauren. He knew about the forgery. This wasn't just a stranger making a mistake. This was a network. I needed to see the house again. I knew it was torture, but I couldn't help myself. I drove back to the cliff, parking down the street so the white van wouldn't see me. The demolition was moving fast, too fast. In the 24 hours since I had been there, the entire front porch had been ripped away. The beautiful wraparound veranda where Grandma used to drink her iced tea was gone, leaving the house looking raw and exposed, like a mouth with missing teeth. A dumpster in the driveway was piled high with yellow wood and antique scrollwork. I walked up the edge of the property line. A different man was hauling debris today. A younger guy with a ponytail and a cigarette hanging from his lip. Hey, I called out. He looked up, squinting. Yeah? Why are you guys moving so fast? I asked. The permit usually takes weeks to clear for this kind of demo. He shrugged, tossing a piece of siding into the dumpster. Boss said it is a rush job. Cash buyer. Wants the lot cleared by the 1st of the month. Cash? I asked. Yeah. Hawthorne Ridge. They don't mess around. Usually. These flips take months, you know? But this one, it is like they are looking for buried treasure or something. They told us to strip it down to the studs by Friday. Why? I asked. Why destroy a historic home? The guy spit his cigarette onto the ground. I don't ask questions. Lady, I just swing the sledgehammer. But between you and me, it is weird. The house is solid. Good bones. No rot. It is a crime to tear it down. But money talks. He went back to work. I watched him smash a crowbar into the window frame of the living room, the window where I used to watch the storms roll in. Cash buyer. Rush job. Demolition of a perfectly good house. They weren't trying to develop the property. They were trying to erase it. My phone rang as I was driving back to town. It was Daniel. Where are you? He asked. Leaving the house? I said. The notary shop owner kicked me out. He mentioned Lauren by mistake, and the contractor says the buyer paid cash and wants the house gone by Friday. Friday, Daniel repeated. That is 4 days away. Okay, listen to me. I got the closing packet from the title company. I had to threaten them with a subpoena. But they faxed it over. And I found the smoking gun. Gabriella, I pulled over to the side of the road, putting the car in park. Tell me, there is a power of attorney document attached to the deed. Daniel said, it is dated August 15th. It grants Lauren Brooks full authority to sign legal documents on your behalf regarding the property at 44 Ocean View Drive. August 15th, I whispered. The signature is a better match than the one on the deed. Daniel said, it looks like they practiced. But here's the kicker. The witness on the power of attorney? It is Stephen Miller, the same notary. So they forged a power of attorney to let Lauren forge the deed. I said, exactly. But Gabriella, if this document exists, Lauren has been planning this for months, since summer, while your grandmother was still alive, while you were working. She was building a paper trail to steal this house before the funeral flowers were even ordered. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. This wasn't just greed. This was malice. This was my big sister, the one who taught me how to braid my hair, the one who protected me from Mom's moods. She had spent her summer plotting to cut me out of existence. I am going to see her. I said, Gabriella. No. Daniel warned. We need to. I am going to see her. Daniel. I need to look her in the eye. I need to hear her say it. I hung up before he could argue. My parents' house was a colonial on the polite side of town, the side with manicured lawns and neighbors who watched from behind lace curtains. There were cars in the driveway, friends, relatives, people bringing casseroles and condolences. I walked in the front door without knocking. The house smelled of lilies and pot roast. My mother was in the living room, holding court with a glass of wine in her hand. Lauren was next to her, wearing a black dress that cost more than my first car, looking tragically beautiful. When I walked in, the room went silent. Gabriella! My mother cried out, her voice tight. We were so worried. You missed dinner last night. You haven't answered your phone. I ignored her. I walked straight to Lauren. We need to talk, I said. Lauren's eyes widened slightly, but she kept her composure. Not now. Gabby, we have guests. Now, I said. I turned and walked into the kitchen. After a moment, I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood behind me. She closed the swinging door, shutting out the murmur of the guests. You are being incredibly rude, Lauren hissed, her face contorting into a mask of annoyance. Mom is barely holding it together. August 15th. I said. Lauren froze. She went very still, like a deer catching a scent in the wind. What? August 15th. I repeated. That is the date on the power of attorney you forged. The one you used to sell Grandma's house while she was still dying in the back bedroom. Lauren stared at me. For a second, I thought she would deny it. I thought she would feign ignorance, but then her face changed. The concern vanished. The grief vanished. What replaced it was a sneer of pure contempt. You think you are so smart, don't you? She said, her voice dropping to a whisper. You with your big city job and your fancy degree. You think you can just waltz back here once a year and claim the prize? It wasn't a prize, Lauren. It was Grandma's home, and it was promised to me. Promised, Lauren scoffed. Words, just words. Who was here? Gabby? Who was here when she fell in the shower? Who was here when she forgot how to use the stove? Me. I was here. I drove her to the doctor's. I changed her sheets. I listened to her tell the same stories 1,000 times while you were in New York, building your career. So you stole it? I asked. That is your justification? You felt entitled to it? I didn't steal anything, she snapped. I saved this family. Do you have any idea how much debt she was in? Do you know how expensive the care facility was going to be? We needed the money, Gabby, and you didn't need it. You have plenty. That is not your decision to make, I shouted. It was my decision, because I was the one doing the work. She took a step toward me, her finger jabbing the air. You are trying to steal from the family, Gabriella. That money is already spent. It paid off the debts. It is gone. If you try to undo this, if you drag this into court, you are going to bankrupt Mom and Dad. Is that what you want? You want to sue your own mother? She was twisting it. She was taking her crime and turning it into my moral failing. It was a masterclass in manipulation. Show me the debts, I said quietly. Show me the bills you paid off. Lauren scoffed. I don't have to show you anything. I am the executor. You are a fraud. Lauren, and I know about the notary. I know about Hawthorne Ridge. Her eyes flickered, a tiny crack in the armor. Get out, she said. Get out of this house. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I didn't know this woman. "I will leave," I said, "but I'm not stopping." I turned and walked out. As I passed through the living room, my mother reached for my arm. "Gabriella, where are you going?" "Ask Lauren," I said. I drove aimlessly for an hour, my hands shaking. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving me exhausted and hollow. I needed a safe harbor. I couldn't go back to the motel yet. I needed someone who remembered Grandma the way I did. I found myself parked in front of a small cottage 2 streets over from Grandma's house. Mrs. Pike, Arlene Pike, had been Grandma's neighbor for 40 years. She opened the door wearing a knitted cardigan, a cat weaving between her legs. "Gabriella?" she asked, peering through the screen. "Oh, my dear. Come in. You look terrible." She made me tea. Real tea. In a china pot. With too much sugar. We sat in her living room, surrounded by doilies and ceramic figurines. "I heard about the house," Mrs. Pike said softly. "It is a sin. A real sin. Edith loved that old place." "Mrs. Pike," I asked, "did Grandma seem okay in the last few months?" Mrs. Pike hesitated. She stirred her tea, the spoon clinking against the porcelain. She was anxious. Gabby, very anxious. She started locking the doors, which she never used to do, and she stopped answering the phone. She told me she felt like there were wolves circling. "Wolves?" She didn't say names. Mrs. Pike said, looking down. "But she was hiding things. She told me. Arlene, if anything happens to me, you tell Gabriella to look in the pantry." "The pantry?" "Yes," she said. "I put the important papers in the cookie tin, way in the back, behind the flour bin, where the kids never look." She meant Lauren and your cousins. I think. She knew they wouldn't dig for baking supplies. My heart skipped a beat. A cookie tin. She was scared. "Mrs. Pike whispered," she said. "They are rushing me. Arlene, they want me to sign things I don't understand." I set my cup down. "Thank you, Mrs. Pike. You have no idea what this means." The sun had set by the time I parked near the cliff again. The streetlights were sparse here, and the ocean was a black void beyond the edge of the lawn. The house was dark. The white van was gone. A chain-link fence had been erected around the perimeter, but it was hasty work, loose at the corners. I didn't care about trespassing. I didn't care about the law. That was my house. I slipped through a gap in the fence near the hydrangeas. The back door was boarded up, but the cellar bulkhead was just latched. I used a rock to hammer the latch open, the sound echoing too loudly in the quiet night. I descended into the basement. It smelled of damp earth and oil. I used the flashlight on my phone, the beam cutting through the dust. I climbed the creaky stairs to the kitchen. The kitchen was a wreck. The cabinets had been ripped off the walls, leaving jagged outlines of paint. The floor was covered in plaster dust, but the pantry was a built-in closet. It was still standing. I pulled the door open. The shelves were mostly empty, stripped by the demo crew. But on the very top shelf, pushed all the way into the corner behind a forgotten jar of molasses, was a round, blue Danish butter cookie tin. I grabbed it. It was heavy. I didn't open it there. I tucked it under my coat and ran. I ran out the back, through the fence, and down the street to my car. I drove until I was 5 miles away, parked in a supermarket parking lot under the glare of a halogen light. My hands were trembling as I pried the lid off. Inside, there were no cookies. There was a stack of papers. I rifled through them. Copies of property tax bills for the last 10 years. All paid. So much for Lauren's story about debt. There was a small notebook. I opened it. It was a log, Grandma's handwriting. Shaky, but legible. August 12th, L. Came by. Brought man with briefcase. Asked me to sign insurance forms. I said no. August 15th, L. Angry today. Said I am being difficult. Who is S.M.? September 1st, L. Took my checkbook. Said she is helping. I felt sick. She had been documenting her own abuse. She knew. At the bottom of the tin was an envelope. It had my name on it. Gabriella. I opened it. The letter was handwritten on her personalized stationery. My dearest Gabby, if you are reading this, I am gone, and things have likely become difficult. I am sorry to leave you with a mess, but I fear my kindness has been turned into a weapon against me. I have not signed anything. Gabby, no matter what they say, no matter what papers they show you, I did not sign away our home. This house is yours. It is my anchor, and I want it to be yours. They think I am confused. I am not confused. I am just old, and I am tired of fighting them. But I know you are a fighter. Trust your instincts. Do not believe the family version of events. There is rot in the walls, my darling, and it is not the wood. Be careful. They are desperate. Love, Grandma. I sat in the front seat of my car, the letter clutching in my hand, and I wept. I wept for her fear. I wept for her loneliness. And then, I wiped my eyes. Mrs. Pike was right. There were wolves, but Grandma was right, too. I was a fighter. And now, I had the ammunition. Daniel Mercer did not sleep. I was fairly certain of that. When I arrived at his office the next morning, he was wearing the same wrinkled shirt, but there was a new energy in the room, a frantic, kinetic charge that hummed like a high-tension wire. He held up a sheaf of papers, the edges still warm from the printer. "We got it," he said, skipping the pleasantries. "I filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order an hour ago. I attached a copy of your grandmother's letter and the flight logs proving you were in Chicago. The judge signed it. He handed me the document. It was heavy, stamped with the seal of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Order to cease and desist. The demolition stops now," Daniel said. "The sheriff is serving Hawthorne Ridge this morning. Nobody touches a single brick on that house until we get a hearing." I felt a rush of relief so intense it made my knees weak. I sat down in the wooden chair. Letting out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 3 days. "We stopped them," I whispered. "We paused them," Daniel corrected, his face serious. "We bought ourselves time. But Gabriella, you need to be ready. When you poke a beast like this, it does not just growl, it bites." He was right. The bite came less than 2 hours later. I was sitting in my rental car, eating a cold sandwich, when my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I usually let those go to voicemail, but my nerves were frayed, so I answered. "Hello?" There was no greeting, just a voice, low and distorted, like someone speaking through a handkerchief or a voice changer. "You are making a mistake. Who is this?" I asked, gripping the phone tight. "Let it go," the voice said. It was male, flat, emotionless. "Walk away while you still have a life to go back to. If you keep digging, you are going to regret it." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was a cliché, something out of a bad movie, but in the silence of that parking lot, it felt terrifyingly real. I called Daniel immediately. "Save the voicemail," he said, his voice hard. "Do not delete it. That is evidence of intimidation." I barely had time to process the threat before the second blow landed. My phone rang again. This time, the caller ID displayed a name that made my stomach drop. Logistics Solutions, Inc. HR Dept. It was my boss's boss in Boston. "Gabriella?" The voice was clipped, formal. "This is Sarah Jenkins. Do you have a moment?" I cleared my throat, trying to sound professional despite the panic rising in my chest. "Of course. Sarah, is everything okay with the quarterly reports?" "This is not about the reports," she said. Her tone was icy. "Gabriella, we received a formal complaint this morning. It was sent anonymously, but it was copied to the legal department and the ethics board." "A complaint?" I asked. "About what?" "The email alleges that you are using company resources and company time to harass an elderly relative and abuse the legal system for personal financial gain." She said, "It claims you are emotionally unstable and that you have been threatening your family members." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My mother, or Lauren, they had gone for my throat. "Sarah, that is a lie," I said, my voice shaking. "My grandmother passed away 10 days ago. I am here dealing with her estate. There is a dispute, yes, but I am the one being defrauded. I do not know the details. Gabriella. And frankly, I do not want to know them. She cut in, but this company has a zero-tolerance policy regarding the misuse of our reputation. We cannot have our directors involved in messy public legal battles that allege elder abuse. It looks bad. It is not true. I insisted. We are placing you on administrative leave pending an internal review. She said, access to your email and server files will be suspended effective immediately. Take the time to sort out your personal life. Do not come back until this is resolved. She hung up. I sat there, the phone slipping from my hand onto the passenger seat. They had not just stolen my house. They were trying to take my livelihood. They wanted to strip me of my credibility, my income, my stability. Until I was just a crazy woman shouting about a conspiracy that no one believed. It was a tactical nuke, and it meant they were watching me. I drove back to Daniel's office, my vision blurry with tears of rage. When I told him, he did not look surprised. He looked grim. They are trying to bleed you out. He said, they know litigation is expensive. If they cut off your income, they figure you will take a settlement just to survive. I am not taking a settlement, I said, the words tasting like copper in my mouth. I don't care if I have to wait tables. I am not letting them win. Good, Daniel said, because while they were busy smearing you, I was busy finding the notary. He turned his laptop screen toward me. Stephen Miller? The notary who stamped the deed and the power of attorney? He does not just work at a pack-and-ship store. That was his side gig. His day job is as a paralegal at a firm called Archer & Associates. I leaned in. Who are they? They are a private legal services firm. Daniel said, they handle document retrieval, filing, runner services, and their biggest client? The title company that handled the sale of your grandmother's house. It is a closed loop. I said, it gets better. Daniel said, I called the state licensing board. Stephen Miller's commission is valid. But when I asked for a copy of his electronic journal, which he is required by law to upload weekly, there is a gap. A gap? From October 10th to October 20th. Daniel said, the data is missing. Corrupted file, according to the note on the server. Convenient, I said, extremely. Daniel agreed. But here's the thing about corruption. It leaves a digital footprint. If he deleted those entries, we can prove it. But we need the physical logbook. I stood up. I'm going to find him. No, Daniel said sharply. You are going to stay away from him. If you approach him, they will claim witness tampering. We let the court handle Stephen Miller. You have a meeting with someone else. Who? The buyer. Daniel said, Hawthorne Ridge Renovations. Their project manager called my office 10 minutes after the sheriff shut down their bulldozers. He wants to talk. The meeting took place in a coffee shop in downtown Rockport. Neutral ground. The man waiting for me did not look like the contractor who had yelled at me on the porch. He was wearing a navy blazer, crisp chinos, and loafers that looked like they had never touched a construction site. He had the smooth, tanned face of a man who played a lot of golf and signed a lot of checks. Gabriella Brooks? He asked, standing up and offering a hand. I am Marcus Thorne. I manage the acquisitions for Hawthorne Ridge. I ignored his hand. I sat down opposite him. You are tearing down my grandmother's house. I said, Mr. Thorne sighed, sitting back down. He looked pained, as if my grief were a minor inconvenience he had to manage, like a zoning variance. Ms. Brooks, please, I understand this is emotional, but let us be clear about the facts. My company bought that property in good faith. We paid fair market value. We have a deed, title insurance, and a closing statement. We are what the law calls bona fide purchasers. You bought stolen property. I said, the deed was forged. I was in Chicago when I supposedly signed it. Mr. Thorne spread his hands. If that is true, then that is a terrible tragedy. But it is a dispute between you and your sister. It has nothing to do with us. We relied on the documents presented to us. We are the victims here. 2. We have a crew standing around costing us thousands of dollars an hour because of your injunction. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Look, Gabriella. Can I call you Gabriella? Your sister. She seemed very eager to sell. She told us the estate was insolvent. She said she needed the cash fast to cover medical debts. We thought we were helping a family in crisis. My grandmother had no debts. I said, I have her tax records. Mister? Thorne shrugged. Families have secrets. But here's the reality. You can tie us up in court for years. You can spend your savings on lawyers. And at the end of the day, even if you prove the forgery. The house is half gutted. It is a shell. He reached into his blazer pocket and pulled out an envelope. He slid it across the table. We are willing to offer you a settlement. This is a check for $50,000. It is a goodwill gesture. Consider it a nuisance fee. You take this, you drop the injunction, and you let us finish the job. You walk away with cash in hand. And you settle your issues with your sister privately. I looked at the envelope. $50,000. It was more money than I had in my bank account. It was enough to pay my rent for a year. And if I don't? I asked. Mister? Thorne's smile did not waver, but his eyes went cold. Then we counter-sue for damages. We sue you for the delay. We sue you for the lost revenue. We will attach a lien to your future earnings. We will make sure that by the time this is over, you owe us money. I looked at him. I saw the arrogance in his posture. He thought I was just a grieving girl who could be bought off with a check and a threat. He didn't know about the letter in the cookie tin. He didn't know about the rage that was burning the fear out of me. I picked up the envelope. I weighed it in my hand. Then I tore it in half. I dropped the pieces on the table. I don't want your money. Mr. Thorne, I want to know who called you. Excuse me? He asked, his smile faltering. My grandmother died on a Tuesday. I said, you closed on the house 4 days later. That takes coordination. Someone called you before she was even cold. Who was it? Was it my sister? Or was it the man who stamped the deed? Mr. Thorne stood up, buttoning his blazer. He looked bored now. You are making a mistake. Miss Brooks, the offer is off the table. See you in court. He walked away. But as I watched him go, I noticed something. He pulled out his phone immediately. He didn't look like a bona fide purchaser who was annoyed. He looked like a man who was reporting a failure to his superiors. I went back to the records office. Daniel had told me to stay out of it. But I couldn't. My brain was itching with the details Thorne had mentioned. Title insurance, clear deed. If the deed was forged, the title search should have flagged something. A property like Grandma's didn't just have a clean history. I pulled the full history of the property, going back 20 years. I sat in the dusty corner of the basement archive, scrolling through the microfilm. There it was, 10 years ago. Grandma had taken out a home equity line of credit. It was small, maybe for roof repairs, but it was a lien against the title. I scrolled forward. The lien sat there, open and unpaid, for years. Then, I found the release. Discharge of mortgage. It was recorded on September 1st, 5 weeks before Grandma died. I looked at the amount. The payoff was $12,000. Who paid it? If Grandma paid it, there would be a withdrawal from her bank account, but I had her statements in the tin. I pulled them out of my bag. September. No withdrawals over $500. So someone else paid off the lien. Someone cleared the title so the house could be sold instantly. You can't sell a house with an open lien. The bank takes the proceeds. But if you pay it off beforehand, the sale proceeds are all cash. I looked at the discharge document again. It was prepared by a law firm, Archer and Associates, the same firm where Stephen Miller, the notary, worked. They weren't just forging signatures. They were cleaning up the financials. They were prepping the house for slaughter like a pig at a fair. I needed to talk to Mrs. Pike again. She was the only witness I had to the time before the silence. I found her in her garden, deadheading chrysanthemums. She looked up, worried. When she saw me, "Did you find it?" she asked. "The tin?" I did. I said, "Thank you. But Mrs. Pike, I need to ask you something else. You said Lauren came by with a man." "Yes," she said, "several times." "Can you describe him? Was he young? Old?" "He was slippery," she said, searching for the word. "Not young, maybe 50. He wore suits that looked a little too big for him. And he had a very loud laugh. It sounded fake. Did Grandma ever introduce him? Mrs. Pike frowned. Once, I was bringing over some soup. They were on the porch, Lauren said. This is Mr. Vance. He is helping with the estate planning. But Edith looked at me and rolled her eyes. She whispered to me later. He is not a planner. He is a fixer. Vance. I typed the name into my phone. Vance attorney. Rockport. Nothing. I tried Vance Real Estate. Nothing. Then I tried the retired attorney mentioned in the folder I had found in the tin. The name on the file tab was Elias Thorne. Wait, Thorne? The buyer's name was Marcus Thorne. I stared at the screen. Was it a coincidence? Or was it family? I looked up Elias Thorne. He was listed as retired/inactive. His office address was an old Victorian house on the other side of the Cape. I have to go. Mrs. Pike, I said. The address for Elias Thorne led me to a nursing home. It was a nice one, with manicured lawns and a view of the bay, but it was still a place where people went to wait for the end. I asked for him at the front desk. He has visitors, the nurse said, but you can wait in the lounge. I sat in a wingback chair, watching the hallway. 10 minutes later, a man walked out of Elias Thorne's room. It was Marcus Thorne, the buyer. He was arguing on his phone, his voice low and angry. He didn't see me. He walked straight out the automatic doors. My blood ran cold. The buyer was visiting Grandma's old lawyer? I waited until he was gone. Then I walked up to the nurse. I am Gabriella Brooks. I said, I am Elias's niece. I just missed my cousin Marcus. Can I see Uncle Elias? The nurse smiled. Of course. Room 204. I walked down the hall. Room 204 was dim, the curtains drawn. An old man sat in a wheelchair by the window, a blanket over his knees. He looked frail, his skin like parchment paper. Mr. Thorne? I asked softly. He turned his head. His eyes were milky with cataracts, but his mind seemed sharp enough. You are not Marcus, he rasped. Who are you? I am Edith Brooks's granddaughter. I said, Gabriella. The name hit him like a physical blow. He flinched, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. Edith, he whispered. Is she? She died. Mr. Thorne, 10 days ago. He closed his eyes, and a tear leaked out, tracking through the deep lines of his face. I told her. He muttered. I told her they wouldn't wait. Who wouldn't wait? I asked, kneeling beside his chair. Mr. Thorne, please. They sold her house. They forged my signature. Marcus Thorne. Was that your son? He is my nephew. The old man spat. The word filled with venom. My greedy, impatient nephew. He thinks he is a developer. He is a vulture. Did you help them? I asked. No, he said, his voice rising. I refused. That is why they put me here. That is why they took my files. He looked at me, his eyes wide with fear. Edith came to me. Last year. She wanted to change her will. She wanted to make sure Lauren couldn't touch the house. We wrote a codicil, a specific bequest. It locked the property in a trust for you. Where is it? I asked. Where is the codicil? I kept the original, he said. But when I got sick, when Marcus moved me here, he cleaned out my office. He took everything. He said he was archiving my files. He grabbed my wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. He destroyed it. Girl, he destroyed the will. That is why they needed the deed fraud. If the will went to probate, someone might have remembered the codicil. But if the house was already sold, then the will doesn't matter. I finished. Exactly. He leaned back, exhausted. There is a copy. He whispered, Where? Edith took one. She said she was going to hide it. She said, I will put it where the silence is. Where the silence is? I repeated. What does that mean? I don't know. He said. She was poetic. But Gabriella, you have to find it. Marcus is not working alone. He has a judge. My stomach bottomed out. A judge? Probate court. Elias wheezed. They have someone on the inside. That is how they move the paperwork so fast. That is how they get the stamps. You are not fighting a family. You are fighting a machine. I left the nursing home feeling like I was walking on a wire over a pit of spikes. Marcus Thorne was the buyer. His uncle was the lawyer who wrote the real will. And they had a judge. I called Daniel. I know the link. I said, Marcus Thorne is Elias Thorne's nephew. Elias wrote a codicil locking the house to me. Marcus stole the files. And Elias says they have a judge. There was a long silence on the other end. Daniel? That explains the expedited certification. Daniel said, his voice sounding hollow. What certification? I was just looking at the probate docket. He said, usually, it takes weeks for a file to be assigned to a judge. Your grandmother's file was assigned in 4 hours. To Judge Vincent Carpino. Is he crooked? He is the golf partner of the owner of the title company, Daniel said, and I am willing to bet he knows Marcus Thorne very well. We were in deep. We weren't just up against a greedy sister. We were up against a local cabal of law and real estate that had likely been doing this to elderly people for years. Gabriella. Daniel said, you need to come to my office, now. We need to secure that house. I am going to the house. I said, no, Daniel shouted. It is not safe. Elias said Grandma hid a copy of the codicil. She said she put it where the silence is. I need to figure out what that means before Marcus realizes I talked to his uncle. Gabriella. I hung up. I drove back to the house. The sun was going down, casting long, bruised shadows across the lawn. The chain-link fence was still there, but the sheriff's notice was stapled to the post. Stop work order. The site was silent. Where the silence is. I walked up the driveway. I looked at the house. The front was ruined. The living room was open to the air. Where was the silence in a house that was always full of ocean wind and creaking wood? I walked around to the back. The contractor van was gone. The dumpster was full. I remembered the library, Grandma's library. It was in the center of the house, an interior room with no windows. She used to go there to read when the storms were too loud. She had cork-lined the walls to dampen the sound. Where the silence is. I climbed through the broken back door. The house groaned around me. I stepped over piles of drywall and debris. The library door was closed. I pushed it open. The room was surprisingly intact. The demo crew hadn't reached the center of the house yet. The bookshelves were empty. The books boxed up and gone. Probably sold by Lauren, but the cork walls were still there. I walked into the room. It was dead quiet. The sounds of the ocean, the wind, the distant traffic, they all vanished. I looked around. Empty shelves, a fireplace that had been bricked up years ago. I ran my hands along the cork. It was soft, crumbling slightly. I looked at the bricked-up fireplace. The bricks were painted white. Where the silence is. I knelt down in front of the hearth. There was a loose brick in the center, right where the grate used to be. I pulled at it. It didn't move. I used my car key to dig at the mortar. It was old and powdery. After 5 minutes of frantic scraping, the brick wiggled. I pulled it free. Behind it was a dark hollow. I reached my hand in. My fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. I pulled it out. It wasn't a paper. It was a lockbox. A heavy gray metal lockbox. It was locked, of course, but I knew where the key was. I had seen it on Grandma's keychain for years. A small brass key she said opened her memories. Lauren had the keychain. I didn't have the key, but I had the box. I stood up, clutching the box to my chest. Suddenly, I heard a sound, a footstep, crunching glass. In the hallway, I froze. Gabriella? The voice was Lauren's. I turned slowly. She was standing in the doorway of the library. She wasn't wearing her funeral black anymore. She was wearing jeans and a thick sweater. And she looked terrified. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "I found it." "Lauren," I said, holding up the box. "I found the codicil." Lauren's eyes dropped to the box. Her face went white. "Give it to me," she said. Her voice was trembling. "You don't understand what is happening." "I understand perfectly." I said, "You and Marcus Thorne and the notary and the judge. You are all going to jail." "No," Lauren said, stepping into the room. She was crying now. You don't get it. I didn't have a choice. They have. She stopped. They have what? I asked. They have the debt. Gabby, my debt. Your debt? I lost it. She sobbed. I lost the money, the investment fund. I lost everything. Marcus. He said he could fix it. He said if I gave him the house, the debt would go away. He said nobody would get hurt because Grandma was dying anyway. I stared at her. My sister. She hadn't done this for Grandma's bills. She had done it to cover her own gambling or bad investments. She had sold our heritage to save her own skin. You monster, I whispered. Give me the box, she screamed. Lunging at me, I dodged her. She scrambled for me, her nails scratching my arm. I shoved her back. She stumbled against the empty bookshelf. Run, she screamed at me. Run, you idiot. He is here. He? I looked past her. Into the dark hallway, a shadow detached itself from the gloom. It was Marcus Thorne, and he was holding a crowbar. So much for the bona fide purchaser. He said, his voice smooth and calm. I didn't hesitate. I smashed the library window with the heavy metal lockbox, shattering the glass. The alarm didn't sound. They had cut the power days ago. The shattered rear window of my rental car was covered in duct tape and plastic sheeting, a flapping, noisy reminder of the line we had crossed. I drove to Daniel's office with the heater blasting, trying to stop the shivering that had settled into my bones since I scrambled down that cliff. I placed the lockbox on Daniel's desk. It sat there, gray and battered, a dense brick of secrets. We do not open it yet, Daniel said, his voice grim. He was pacing, his tie undone, circles of exhaustion dark under his eyes. Why not? I asked. It is my grandmother's box. Because we need a chain of custody, he said. If we pry this open with a screwdriver now, they will claim we planted whatever is inside. We need a court order to open it in front of a witness, or better yet, in front of a judge. He sat down, rubbing his temples. I filed for expanded discovery this morning. Gabriella. I asked for everything. Notary logs, title insurance internal emails, the probate file audit trail. I threw the kitchen sink at them, and they responded 15 minutes ago. He pushed a stack of papers across the desk. It was thick, dense with legalese. Motion to quash, motion for protective order, motion to dismiss for lack of standing, motion for sanctions against plaintiff for frivolous litigation. They are burying us, Daniel said. This is what big firms do. They don't try to win on the facts. They try to drown you in paper. Responding to each of these motions will take me 10 hours. At my hourly rate, that is $5,000. They are betting you will run out of money before we ever get to open that box. I stared at the paperwork. It was a paper wall built to hide a crime. I have some savings, I said, though my stomach tightened. It is not just money. Gabriella, it is time. Every day we spend fighting these motions is a day the restraining order gets closer to expiring. If the judge lifts that order, the house comes down. My phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen, the word Mom pulsing like a warning light. I hadn't spoken to her since the confrontation at her house, since I realized she was either a pawn or a player in this game. I answered, Gabriella? Her voice was wet, thick with tears. I am here. Mom. Oh, thank God. She sniffled. Gabby, you have to stop this. Please, you are killing your sister. I nearly laughed. It would have been a hysterical. Broken sound. I am killing her? I asked. Mom, her business partner chased me with a crowbar yesterday. He smashed my car window. He was trying to stop you from stealing. Mom wailed. Lauren told me everything. She said you broke into the property, that you were screaming and throwing bricks. She said you looked unhinged. Gabby. She is terrified of you. She is having panic attacks. She hasn't slept. She is lying. Mom, she is your sister, Mom shouted, her voice sharpening into that familiar tone of disappointment. Why are you doing this? Is it jealousy? Is it because Grandma left you the jewelry and she got the house? She didn't get the house. Mom, she stole the house. Stop it. You are tearing this family apart. We are grieving, and you are turning it into a war zone. I want you to come to dinner tonight." "Dinner?" "Yes, here, at the house. Just family. No lawyers, no contractors, just us." Lauren wants to explain. She wants to show you the medical bills. She wants to make peace. I looked at Daniel. He was watching me, shaking his head slightly. "Don't go," his eyes said, but I had to know. I had to see how far they were willing to go to maintain the lie. "I will be there," I said. "But if Marcus Thorne is there, I am calling the police. It is just family." Mom promised. The house smelled of roast chicken and tension. My father sat in his armchair, staring at the television, refusing to make eye contact with me. He had always been passive, letting Mom steer the ship, but his silence now felt like complicity. Lauren was at the table. She looked small, wrapped in a jagged anxiety that seemed almost real when I walked in. She didn't look up. "Sit down." "Gabriella," Mom said, placing a platter of green beans on the table. I sat. I didn't eat. "Lauren says you are confused about the money." Mom started, serving herself. "She says you think she kept the proceeds. I don't think she kept them." I said, looking at Lauren, "I think she used them to pay off her own debts." Lauren looked up then. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "It was for Grandma," she whispered. Her voice was raspy. "Gabby, you weren't here. The treatments, the specialists. Insurance didn't cover everything. It cost thousands a month. I borrowed money to pay for it because Grandma's accounts were dry. When we sold the house, I was just reimbursing myself." I pulled a folded piece of paper from my pocket. "I called the hospital billing department this morning. Lauren, Grandma's Medicare and supplemental insurance covered 100% of her hospice care. There were no outstanding bills, not one dime." Lauren flinched. She looked at Mom. Mom slammed her fork down. "Why are you hunting for reasons to hate her?" Mom demanded. "Why can't you just accept that she handled it? She was the one changing the diapers. Gabriella. She was the one administering the morphine. You were in New York." I felt the old guilt rise up, the programmed response to defer to the martyr. But then I remembered the letter in the tin. My kindness has been turned into a weapon. I am not hating her. I said quietly, "I am looking for the truth. And the truth is, the house was sold before Grandma died. The truth is, the deed was forged. The truth is, there were no medical bills." Lauren stood up, her chair screeching against the floor. "I can't do this," she sobbed. "I can't. She is obsessed. She wants to ruin me." She ran out of the room. We heard her bedroom door slam upstairs. Mom looked at me with pure venom. "Are you happy?" she hissed. "You have won." You made her cry. "I hope the house is worth it." Gabriella, "I hope it is worth losing your mother and your sister." I stood up. "I haven't lost you." "Mom," I said, "you threw me away the moment I asked a question you didn't want to answer." I walked out. My father never looked away from the TV. I went back to the motel. I couldn't sleep. The image of Lauren's performance, the tears, the deflection, kept playing in my mind. It was convincing. If I didn't have the documents, I might have believed her. I pulled out the Danish butter cookie tin again. I had found it before, but I hadn't looked closely at everything. I had been so focused on the letter and the logbook. I dumped the contents onto the bedspread. Tax bills, the notebook, the letter, and at the bottom, a stack of envelopes held together by a rubber band, bank statements. I snapped the rubber band. I opened the most recent one. September. I scanned the transaction list. Withdrawal. ATM, $300. Withdrawal. ATM, $300. Withdrawal. ATM, $500. Every 2 or 3 days. Small amounts, just under the limit that might trigger a fraud alert from the bank. I went back to August. Same pattern. July. Same pattern. I opened the calculator on my phone. I started adding them up. 3,000 in September, 4,000 in August. I went back a full year. It totaled over $40,000. Someone had been bleeding Grandma dry. $300 at a time. For 12 months. I grabbed the notebook, the one where Grandma had written initials and dates. August 12th, L. Came by. August 15th, L. Angry today. I compared the dates. August 12th. Withdrawal $300. August 15th. Withdrawal $500. The dates matched perfectly. Every time Lauren visited, money disappeared. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty motel room. This wasn't just about the house. The house was just the final payout. Lauren had been stealing from Grandma for a year. She had been treating our grandmother like an ATM, and Grandma knew. That was why she wrote the notes. She was building a case against her own granddaughter. The next morning, I showed Daniel the correlation. He laid the statements out on his conference table, his face hardening as he connected the dots. This is elder abuse, financial exploitation. He said, it is a specific crime in Massachusetts. If we take this to the district attorney, they will open a criminal investigation. But? I asked. I heard the but in his voice. But criminal investigations are slow, Daniel said. The DA will want to subpoena the bank records directly. They will want to interview the tellers. It could take months to get an indictment. And the house? The house is a civil matter, Daniel said. The criminal case might help us eventually, but it won't stop the demolition next week. We need something faster. We need to break the probate fraud. He picked up a file from his desk. Speaking of probate, I sent my clerk to the courthouse this morning to dig into the physical file, not the digital one, the paper one. What did she find? She found a stamp on the back of the file jacket. Daniel said, it is an internal routing stamp. It says expedited certification. VC. VC. I said, Vincent Carpino. The judge? Exactly. But here's the thing. Expedited certification is usually reserved for emergency guardianships or estates with perishable assets, like a farm with livestock. It is almost never used for a standard real estate bequest. So why was it used here? Because someone walked that file into the judge's chambers and asked for a favor. Daniel said, and that someone had to be an attorney who knows Judge Carpino well. Marcus Thorne's uncle, Elias, told me they had a judge. I said, we are getting closer. Gabriella, we have the motive, Lauren's theft. We have the method, the forgery, and now we have the mechanism, the corrupt judge. But we need to prove the link between Lauren and the judge. I returned to my apartment in Boston briefly that afternoon to pick up more clothes. I felt like a fugitive in my own home. The building felt unsafe, exposed. As I unlocked my mailbox in the lobby, I saw a plain manila envelope, no return address, just my name, typed on a label. I opened it right there in the lobby. Inside was a single sheet of paper, family settlement agreement. It outlined a deal. I would drop all claims to the property at 44 Ocean View Drive. I would acknowledge that the deed transfer was valid. I would receive a payment of $100,000, and I would sign a non-disclosure agreement preventing me from ever discussing the estate, the renovation, or any related financial matters. At the bottom, there was a signature line for me, and next to it, a sticky note. You will lose everything if you keep going. Take the money. Last chance. I stared at the paper. $100,000. It was double their first offer. They were scared. But the line that chilled me wasn't the money. It was the NDA. Any related financial matters. They knew I found the bank statements. How did they know? I looked up at the ceiling of the lobby. A security camera blinked back at me. I realized then that I wasn't just fighting a legal battle. I was being watched. I drove back to Rockport, the envelope burning a hole in the passenger seat. I went straight to Daniel. They know about the bank statements. I said, tossing the settlement offer on his desk, look at the NDA clause. Daniel read it. Any related financial matters. You are right. He said, this is specific. Too specific. How do they know? I asked. I only found them last night. I only told you this morning. Daniel went quiet. He looked around his office. He looked at his phone. Gabriella, turn off your phone, he said softly. I did. We need to assume they have access to our communications, he said. Maybe not my encrypted email, but your phone? if you have been on the family plan, or if Lauren ever had access to your device. I felt sick. I was still on the family plan. It was cheaper. I had never bothered to change it. They can see my location. I whispered, they can probably see my call logs, maybe even my texts. Daniel nodded. That is how Marcus knew you were at the house. That is how they knew to send the offer today. He stood up and walked to the window, peering through the blinds. We need to go to the police. Gabriella, this is stalking. This is witness intimidation. I thought about the police station. Small town. Everyone knew everyone. Did Marcus Thorne have friends there, too? If we go to the police, I said, they will arrest Lauren. Yes, Daniel said. They will. I thought about my mother's face at the dinner table. You are tearing this family apart. If I arrested Lauren, there was no going back. I would be the daughter who put her sister in handcuffs. I would be the pariah. But if I didn't, I looked at the settlement offer. You will lose everything. They were counting on my guilt. They were banking on the fact that I was the good sister, the one who followed the rules, the one who didn't cause trouble. They were weaponizing my own morality against me. Do it, I said. Call the police. We went to the station. We filed a report. We showed the officer the threatening voicemail, the settlement offer, the smashed car window, the officer, a Sergeant Miller, no relation to the notary. I hoped. Took notes. He looked tired. We will look into it. Ms. Brooks, he said, but without a direct witness placing Marcus Thorne at your car. It is a he said, she said situation regarding the window and the settlement offer. It is unsigned. Anyone could have sent it. What about the identity fraud? Daniel pressed. The notary logs? That is a civil matter. Counselor, the sergeant said. Unless you have proof of criminal intent. We walked out of the station frustrated. It was exactly what Daniel had warned me about. The system was designed to protect the status quo. But as we walked down the steps, a woman approached us. She was wearing a gray cardigan and holding a clutch purse tight against her chest. I recognized her from the courthouse. She was the clerk Daniel had mentioned, the sympathetic one. Mr. Mercer? She asked, her voice trembling. Daniel stopped. Janice, what are you doing here? I couldn't talk at the office, she said, looking over her shoulder. But I heard you were filing a complaint. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. You are asking about the expedited certification on the Brooks file. Yes, Daniel said. I didn't stamp it, she said. I handle all the intake for probate. I didn't stamp it. When I came in on Monday morning, the file was already on Judge Carpino's desk. It bypassed the queue entirely. Who logged it in? Daniel asked. There is no login, she said. That is the point. It wasn't in the system until the judge signed it. But I saw who dropped it off. Who? I asked. She looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. It wasn't a lawyer. She said, it was a woman, blonde, very pretty. She was crying. She went into the judge's chambers with a box of donuts. She came out 10 minutes later without the file, Lauren. Lauren didn't just have a lawyer. She had direct access to the judge. Why would the judge do that for her? Daniel asked. Janice swallowed hard. Because of the debt, she whispered. What debt? I asked. Not hers, Janice said. The judge's. Everyone in the courthouse knows Carpino is underwater. He plays poker at the club owned by the investors behind Hawthorne Ridge. The pieces slammed together. The judge owed money to the investors. The investors wanted the land. Lauren wanted to clear her own debt, so they made a deal. The judge rushes the probate. Lauren sells the house cheap to the investors. The investors forgive the judge's gambling debt, and Lauren gets a payout to cover her theft. It was a perfect circle of corruption, and my grandmother's legacy was the currency they used to pay their tabs. We walked Janice to her car. She was shaking. If you tell anyone I told you, I will lose my pension, she said. We won't, Daniel promised. But Janice, we might need you to testify. She didn't say yes. She just drove away. I looked at Daniel. We have them. I said, we have a theory. Daniel corrected. A very good theory. But we need hard evidence. We need to prove the judge's debt, or we need to prove Lauren knew him. We need the lockbox. I said. Daniel nodded. We need to open the box. Tonight. Screw the court order. We drove back to his office. The box was still on the desk. Daniel pulled a drill from his tool drawer. This is going to destroy the lock, he said. If we are wrong, we are liable for destruction of estate property. We aren't wrong. I said. He braced the box against the desk. The drill whined. A high-pitched scream in the quiet office. Metal shavings curled up like silver worms. With a clunk, the lock cylinder gave way. Daniel pried the lid open. Inside, there was a velvet pouch and a flash drive. I opened the pouch first. It was Grandma's diamond engagement ring, the one she said she lost years ago, and wrapped around it was a note. For Gabby. Because you are the only one who never asked for it. I choked back a sob. She had hidden it to keep Lauren from pawning it. Then, Daniel picked up the flash drive. He plugged it into his laptop. A folder opened. It contained scanned PDFs. I leaned in. Last Will and Testament of Edith Brooks. Draft. Codicil. A. Property Trust. And an audio file. Meeting _ with _ Lauren _ August _ 20.mp3. Daniel looked at me. His hand hovered over the mouse. Ready? Play it, I said. He clicked play. Grandma's voice filled the room, sounding tinny but clear. Grandma. I don't understand. Lauren, why do I have to sign this? Lauren. Because it protects the house. Grandma, I told you, if you don't sign it, the state will take it for taxes. Grandma. But the taxes are paid. Gabby checked them. Lauren. Voice rising. Gabby doesn't know anything. She's in New York. I am here. I am the one taking care of you. Just sign the damn paper. Grandma. Sound of paper rustling. I don't like this. Who is that man? Lauren. He is a friend. He is going to notarize it so we don't have to go out. Just sign it. Grandma, do it for me. Please. If you love me, you will sign it. Grandma. Quietly. I love you. Lauren. But this feels wrong. Lauren. Sign it, or I am walking out that door and I am not coming back. You can rot here alone. There was a long silence on the recording. Then the scratch of a pen. The recording ended. I sat there, frozen. It wasn't just fraud. It wasn't just theft. It was extortion. Lauren had threatened to abandon a dying woman to force her to sign a power of attorney. I looked at Daniel. He was pale. We don't need the judge anymore. He said quietly. We don't need the notary logs. We have a confession. I said. And tomorrow. I said. Standing up, we are going to play it for the world. The courtroom was cold. A sterile box of polished wood and fluorescent light that smelled of floor wax and anxiety. I sat next to Daniel Mercer. My hands clasped so tightly in my lap that my fingers were numb. We weren't in a trial yet. This was a hearing on our motion for expanded discovery. A dry procedural step that felt like a knife fight in a phone booth. Lauren's lawyer, a slick man named Mr. Henderson, who wore a suit that cost more than my car, was arguing that my requests were a fishing expedition. Your Honor, he droned. Ms. Brooks is a grieving sister who is unfortunately lashing out. There is no evidence of fraud here, just a family dispute. Judge Carpino was not presiding. Since Daniel had flagged the irregularity of the case assignment, Carpino had recused himself to avoid the appearance of impropriety, which was legal speak for running for cover. The new judge, a stern woman named Judge Reynolds, peered over her glasses. Mr. Mercer, she said, you are asking for the metadata of a notary's journal. That is highly invasive. Do you have cause? We do. Your Honor, Daniel said, standing up. He didn't shout. He didn't wave his arms. He was terrifyingly calm. We have reason to believe the notarization of the deed transfer for 44 Ocean View Drive did not occur on the date recorded. Judge Reynolds paused. Grant the order, she said. That order was the key. It was the crowbar we needed to pry open the digital vault. 2 days later, The results came back from the state's electronic notary database. Daniel called me into his office. He didn't say a word. He just pointed to his computer screen. It was a forensic report of the file uploaded by Stephen Miller. "Look at the timestamps," Daniel said. I looked. The deed was dated October 14th. The notary stamp was dated October 14th, but the metadata, the digital fingerprint of the file creation, said something else entirely. Image created. October 24th. Software. Adobe Acrobat Pro /insert function. October 24th. I whispered, "That is 4 days after Grandma died." "Exactly," Daniel said. "They didn't just forge the signature, Gabriella. They didn't even have a body to fake it with. They took a scan of your grandmother's signature from an old document, probably a check or a holiday card, and they digitally pasted it onto the deed. Then Miller stamped it and backdated the log entry. It is a cut-and-paste job," I said, feeling a mix of vindication and nausea. "It is forgery," Daniel corrected, "and it is clumsy. They thought nobody would look this deep. They thought the expedited probate would bury it before anyone asked for the metadata." He picked up his phone. "Now, we deposed the mail shop owner, and this time, he is going to talk. The deposition of Arthur Penn, the owner of the pack and ship station, took place in a windowless conference room at a court reporting service in Danvers. Arthur looked like a man who had not slept in a week. His skin was pasty, and he kept wiping his palms on his trousers. He had a lawyer with him, a public defender who looked bored. "Mr. Penn," Daniel began, placing the metadata report on the table. "You are under oath. Do you understand the penalties for perjury?" Arthur nodded. "Yes." Daniel leaned forward. "We know Stephen Miller didn't notarize that deed on October 14th. We know the signature is digital. We know the logbook entry was altered. My question to you is simple. Did you know?" Arthur's eyes darted around the room. "I just run the register. Steve was an independent contractor." Daniel didn't blink. "We have credit card receipts showing Lauren Brooks purchased $300 worth of expedited processing services from your shop on October 24th. What was she buying?" "Arthur? You don't sell stamps that expensive." Arthur crumbled. It wasn't a slow erosion. It was a landslide. He slumped in his chair, putting his head in his hands. "She came in the back." He mumbled. "Speak up, please," Daniel said. "She came in the back door," Arthur shouted, his voice cracking. "She had the papers. She said she needed them done now. She said her grandmother had already signed them, but they forgot to stamp them before she passed. She was crying. She said she would lose the house if we didn't help her." "And the signature?" Daniel pressed. "Steve did it," Arthur said, looking miserable. "He scanned it from a birthday card she brought in. He said it was technically illegal, but morally okay, because that is what the old lady wanted. Morally okay." I looked at Arthur Penn and wondered how many crimes had been committed in that small town under the guise of helping a neighbor. "And was she alone?" Daniel asked. Arthur shook his head. "No, there was a guy with her. Older guy. Suit. He didn't come in. He waited in the car. A black SUV. Did you see the driver?" Arthur hesitated. "I saw him through the window. It was the guy from the construction company, the one on all the signs, Marcus Thorne." I said. Arthur nodded. "Yeah, him." The web was tightening, but every time we pulled a thread, it revealed a knot I hadn't expected. I spent the next day following the money. If Marcus Thorne and Hawthorne Ridge had bought the house, where did the cash come from? Daniel had pulled the corporate filings for Hawthorne Ridge Renovations, LLC. It was a shell company, formed 3 months ago. Its sole member was another LLC. I traced that one. And then another. It ended at a group called North Shore Revitalization Partners. I looked up the partners. It was a list of names that read like the donor plaque at the local library, prominent businessmen, the owner of the car dealership, the president of the country club, and then I saw a connection that made my blood run cold. The Rockport Community Foundation. My mother was on the board of that foundation. She had been the treasurer for 10 years. I dug deeper. The foundation had recently issued a community improvement grant to North Shore Revitalization Partners for the purpose of clearing blighted properties. Blighted properties. Grandma's house wasn't blighted, it was historic, but they had labeled it distressed to qualify for the grant. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. My mother wasn't just a bystander being manipulated by Lauren, she was part of the ecosystem that made this possible. The people who were hugging her at the funeral, the ones bringing casseroles and telling her how brave she was, they were the investors. They were using my mother's grief as a shield while they stripped the assets from her own mother's estate. Did Mom know? Or was she just useful? I remembered her face at dinner. You are tearing this family apart. She was protecting the status quo. Because if the truth came out, it wouldn't just be Lauren going to jail, it would be the destruction of her entire social circle. We needed Elias Thorne. The retired attorney was the only one who could speak to Grandma's true intent. Daniel subpoenaed him, but Elias agreed to talk voluntarily. He was tired of hiding in the nursing home. We met him in the facility's solarium. Daniel brought a videographer to record the statement, just in case Elias didn't make it to trial. Elias sat in his wheelchair, a blanket over his legs, looking frail but determined. Mr. Thorne, Daniel asked, did Edith Brooks ever express a desire to sell her home? Never. Elias rasped. His voice was thin, like dry leaves. She was terrified of losing it. That house was her identity. Did she ever mention a power of attorney? Elias nodded. In August, she called me in a panic. She said Lauren had brought a man to the house. She said they tried to force her to sign a paper giving Lauren control of her finances. She refused. What did she do after that? She came to me. Elias said, we drafted a codicil, a specific amendment to her will. She wanted to bypass the family entirely. She left the property in a trust. The beneficiary was Gabriella Brooks. And what happened to that document? Elias closed his eyes. My nephew took it, Marcus. When he moved me in here, he cleared out my files. He said he was digitizing them, but I never saw them again. So the document is gone? Daniel asked. Elias opened his eyes. He looked at me. Edith was smart. He whispered, she knew they were watching her. She told me she made a copy. She said she hid it. Where? I asked. He smiled. A sad, knowing smile. She said, I put it in the heart of the house. Where the silence is. The pressure on Lauren was becoming unbearable. The deposition of the mail shop owner had leaked, small towns talk, and the investors were likely getting nervous. That evening, I got a text from Lauren. Meet me. Please, no lawyers. Just sisters. The pier. 8 p.m. Daniel told me not to go. He said it was a trap, but I had to look her in the eye. I had to give her one last chance to be human. I drove to the pier. The wind was biting, whipping the waves against the pylons. Lauren was standing near the railing, wrapped in a trench coat, smoking a cigarette. I hadn't seen her smoke since high school. You look tired, she said as I approached. I am tired, Lauren. I am tired of digging up crimes my sister committed. She flicked the cigarette into the water. It is over, Gabby, she said. The investors. They are pulling out. The injunction is costing them too much. They want to settle. I waited. She reached into her purse and pulled out a check. She held it out to me. The wind fluttered the edges. $200,000, she said, cash, from the company, and another $50,000 from me personally. That is $250,000. Gabby, that is more than the house is worth in this market. I looked at the check. It was a life-changing amount of money. And what do I have to do? I asked. Lauren pulled out a document. It was thick. Sign this. It is a non-disclosure agreement. You drop the lawsuit. You retract the accusations of fraud. You agree that the sale was valid and that Grandma was of sound mind. And you never, ever speak about this again. I looked at her face. It was pleading. But underneath the fear, there was still that arrogance. She thought she could buy her way out of a felony. Why? I asked. Why are you protecting them? I am not protecting them, Lauren snapped. I am protecting us. Do you have any idea what will happen if this goes to trial? Marcus Thorne will testify. He will say, I orchestrated everything. He will throw me to the wolves to save his partners. I will go to prison. Gabby, you committed forgery. Lauren, you stole our grandmother's home. I did what I had to do, she screamed over the wind. I was drowning. I owed money to people who don't send collection letters. Marcus said he could make it go away. So you sold Grandma. I saved her, Lauren cried. I kept her in that house until the end. I made sure she died in her own bed. That was the deal. The deal. You traded her legacy for your safety. I said, take the money. Gabby, she pleaded, shoving the check toward me. Take the money and go back to New York. If you don't, if you force this, they are going to destroy you. They have lawyers you can't imagine. They will drag up every mistake you have ever made. They will ruin your career. I looked at the check. Then I looked at the dark water churning below us. It is not about the house anymore. Lauren, I said softly. What? It is about the leverage. I said, that house. It isn't just a building to them. It is a crime scene. It is proof of a network. The notary, the title company, the probate judge, the foundation. Lauren went pale. You know, I know enough, I said, and I am not signing. I turned to walk away. Gabriella, she screamed, don't be a fool. You can't beat them. I didn't look back. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing alone on the pier with her check and her fear. The next morning, Daniel dropped the bombshell. He had been reviewing the production from the title insurance company. Usually, these documents are boring, policy numbers, exclusions. But Daniel had found an email thread that had been inadvertently included in the disclosure. It was an exchange between a junior underwriter and the regional manager. Subject, flag on file, 44-OV-Brooks underwriter, note. The deed signature looks inconsistent with the file exemplar. Also, the notary journal is missing for the signing date. Recommend declining coverage pending verification. And the response, dated 2 hours later. From the regional manager, override approved per M, Thorne conversation, issue the policy, priority rush, override. They knew. I said, the insurance company knew it was forged. Daniel nodded. They flagged it. But someone at the top pushed it through. This proves the conspiracy. Gabriella, it proves that Marcus Thorne has hooks into the insurance provider. He didn't just trick them. He colluded with them. This means the title policy is void. I said, it means more than that. Daniel said, it means we have grounds for a RICO suit. Racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations. We can sue the whole lot of them. The renovation company, the notary, the law firm, the insurance provider, as a criminal enterprise. He looked at me, his eyes gleaming. But we need the physical proof. We have the metadata. We have the emails. But we need the will. We need the codicil Elias talked about. Where the silence is, I stood up. I am going to the house, Gabriella. The restraining order allows us access, but it is dangerous. Come with me. I said, bring the sheriff if you have to. But I'm going to find that box. We met the sheriff at the property. The house looked even worse than before. The siding was stripped, exposing the raw wood sheathing. The windows were gaping holes. It looked like a skeleton. The sheriff. A man named Deputy Miller. Again, no relation. Just a small town with 3 last names. Unlock the chain-link fence. You have 30 minutes, he said. And don't break anything. We walked inside. The air was cold and smelled of old plaster and wet wood. I went straight to the library, the room where I had confronted Lauren 2 days ago, the room where I had smashed the window. The glass was still on the floor. I walked to the fireplace. The brick I had loosened was still loose. But I hesitated. Elias had said, where the silence is. The library was cork-lined. It was silent. But was the fireplace the heart? I looked around the room. The demolition crew had been here since my last visit. They had started ripping down the cork walls. One section of the wall, near the built-in bookshelves, had been opened up. The cork was peeled back, revealing the studs. And there, wedged between two studs, was something I hadn't seen before. It wasn't a brick, it was a metal box. Not the cookie tin I had found in the pantry, not the lockbox I had grabbed in the panic with Lauren, which, I realize now in the cold light of day, had been her own box of financial records she was trying to hide, the one I left in Daniel's office. This was different. It was an old, heavy, fireproof safe, bolted to the stud itself. It had been painted over to match the wall, invisible until the cork was stripped away. The heart of the house. The construction crew must have exposed it and left it, maybe waiting for the boss to open it. I walked over to it. It had a combination dial. I didn't know the combination, but I knew Grandma. I tried her birthday. Nothing. I tried the date she bought the house. Nothing. Then I remembered the letter from the pantry. Trust your instincts. I closed my eyes. What was the most important number to her? It wasn't a date. It was a coordinate. We used to sail together. She taught me navigation. She always said, if you get lost, Gabriella, you find the North Star. You find home. The latitude of the house, 42.65. I spun the dial. Right to 42, left to 65, right to 00. Click. The handle turned. Daniel let out a breath he had been holding. The sheriff stepped closer, curious despite himself. I pulled the heavy door open. Inside. There was no jewelry, no cash. There was a thick manila envelope sealed with wax, and a small black USB drive taped to the front of it. I reached in and took them. The envelope felt heavy, substantial. I handed the envelope to Daniel. Chain of custody. I said, open it. Daniel broke the seal. He pulled out the documents. He scanned the first page. His eyes went wide. This is it, he said. The original codicil. Signed, witnessed, and notarized by Elias Thorne. It explicitly revokes any power of attorney and places the property in an irrevocable trust for Gabriella Brooks. He flipped the page, and here is a handwritten affidavit from your grandmother, dated 2 weeks before she died. He read aloud. I, Edith Brooks, being of sound mind, declare that I am under duress. My granddaughter Lauren is pressuring me to sell my home. I fear for my safety. If any document appears with my signature transferring this property, it is a forgery. I felt the tears sting my eyes. She had fought back. In the quiet. In the dark. She had fought back. What is on the drive? The sheriff asked. I picked up the small black stick. It had a piece of masking tape on it. On the tape, in Grandma's shaky handwriting, was a date. October 24th. The date of the forgery. But Grandma died on October 20th. I looked at Daniel. How could she have a drive labeled with a date after her death? Unless she didn't label it. Unless this drive didn't come from Grandma. I looked at the box again. It was hidden deep, but maybe someone else used the hiding spot? Or maybe Grandma had set a trap that kept recording? We need to plug this in, Daniel said. Now. We went back to the sheriff's cruiser. Daniel pulled out his laptop. He plugged the drive in. There was one video file. Daniel clicked play. The image was grainy. It was a recording from a hidden camera, a nanny cam. It showed the library. But it wasn't Grandma in the frame. It was the room. Empty. The timestamp in the corner read October 24th, 11 p.m. The door opened. Lauren walked in. She was holding a flashlight. Behind her was a man, Marcus Thorne. They walked to the desk. Lauren was crying. Lauren, we can't do this. Marcus, it is wrong. Marcus, it is done. Lauren, the deed is stamped. The money is wired. You can't back out now. Lauren, but Gabby? She will know. Marcus, she won't know anything. We will tear the house down before she even gets the probate notice. By the time she gets here, there will be nothing left but dirt. Lauren, sobbing. I am sorry. Grandma, I am so sorry. Marcus, stop talking to ghosts. Help me look for the other papers. You said Elias told her to hide a copy. They started tearing books off the shelves. They were looking for the codicil. They were looking for the very box I had just found. But they didn't find it. They didn't know about the loose brick or the panel behind the cork. The video ended. I sat there. the ocean wind howling outside the car. We didn't just have a forged signature. We had a video of them conspiring to destroy evidence 4 days after the murder. No, not murder, but after the death. We had them. I looked at the house one last time. It was broken, battered, and stripped, but it had held on. It had kept the secret safe until I was ready to hear it. "Let's go," I said to Daniel. "I think we have an indictment to file." Daniel sat at his desk, the glow of the monitor illuminating the deep lines of exhaustion etched into his face. The office was quiet, save for the hum of the hard drive spinning. We had spent the last hour cataloging the contents of the flash drive I had retrieved from the wall safe. It was a digital tomb. There were scanned PDFs of the unadulterated will, the codicil, and bank statements that Grandma had annotated in her shaky script. But the file that made Daniel go pale, the one that made him stop clicking and sit back in his chair with a heavy sigh, was an audio file simply labeled September 12th. He looked at me. "Are you ready to hear this?" he asked. I nodded, though my throat felt tight. "Play it." He clicked the mouse. The sound of static filled the room, followed by the distinctive, rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in Grandma's hallway. Then, her voice. It was weak, breathless, but unmistakably hers. "I am recording this because I am afraid," she said. "Lauren was here again today. She brought the man from the title company, the one with the wet hands, Mr. Pritchett. They told me that if I did not sign over the deed, the state would seize the house for back taxes. I know this is a lie. Gabriella checked the taxes, but they shouted at me. Lauren threw a vase against the wall. She said I was being selfish. She said she deserved this house for putting up with me." There was a pause on the recording, a sound like a stifled sob. "I have not signed anything," the voice continued, gaining a sudden, fierce strength. "But Mr. Pritchett said he could handle the paperwork fast. He said he did not need my hand to hold the pen. He said he just needed my consent, and he would take care of the rest. I told him to leave, but I know they will come back. If I die, and this house is sold, know that I did not do it. I wanted it for Gabby." The recording ended. Daniel rubbed his face with both hands. "That is it," he said softly. "That is the nail in the coffin. She names the title agent. She describes the coercion, and she explicitly states her intent not to sell." He looked at me. "We are not just winning a motion tomorrow, Gabriella. We are burying them." The courtroom for the final hearing was packed. Word had spread in our small town. The gossip mill had churned out rumors of forgery and secret safes, and the gallery was full of curious neighbors, including Mrs. Pike, who gave me a small, grim nod from the back row. Lauren sat at the defense table next to Mr. Henderson. She looked immaculate in a cream-colored suit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. She did not look at me. She stared straight ahead at the judge's bench, her jaw set in a hard line. Judge Reynolds entered, her black robe sweeping around her. She looked impatient. "Mr. Mercer," she said, adjusting her glasses, "you filed an emergency supplement to your motion this morning. You claim to have new evidence regarding the validity of the deed." "We do, Your Honor," Daniel said. Standing up, he held the flash drive in his hand. It looked small and insignificant, a piece of plastic against the weight of the law. "We have recovered a digital journal from the deceased, Edith Brooks. It contains audio recordings made weeks before her death, documenting a conspiracy to defraud the estate." "Objection, Mr. Henderson shot up. "This is hearsay. The declarant is unavailable for cross-examination. It is a dying declaration, Your Honor," Daniel countered smoothly. "And it is accompanied by forensic metadata, proving the deed currently on file with the registry was created 4 days after the death of the grantor." The judge paused. She looked at Mr. Henderson, then at Daniel. "Play the audio, Mr. Mercer." Daniel plugged the drive into the court's AV system. Grandma's voice filled the high-ceilinged room, amplified by the speakers. Lauren threw a vase against the wall. She said I was being selfish. He said he did not need my hand to hold the pen. The silence in the courtroom after the recording stopped was absolute. I looked at Lauren. She had not moved, but her face had lost all color. She looked like a statue made of ash. Daniel didn't stop there. He projected the metadata report onto the screen. "Your Honor," he said, pointing to the laser-projected text, "this is the creation log for the digital signature on the deed. It was generated on October 24th. Edith Brooks passed away on October 20th. Unless Mrs. Brooks signed this document from the grave, it is a forgery. Mr. Henderson stood up, but his confidence was gone. He tugged at his collar. "Your Honor," he stammered, "my client contends that her grandmother was confused. She often forgot dates. The recording. It shows a woman suffering from dementia, paranoid delusions. She likely recorded that on a bad day. It doesn't prove the deed is fake. It just proves she was difficult." Judge Reynolds looked at him. Her expression was withering. "Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice dropping to a register that vibrated with authority, "you are suggesting that a woman with dementia hallucinated a metadata timestamp? You are suggesting she imagined the specific date of a digital file creation that occurred after her own funeral?" She leaned forward. "This court is disturbed. Mr. Henderson, the consistency of the evidence, the missing notary logs, the backdated entries, and now this, suggests a level of malfeasance that goes far beyond a family dispute." She banged her gavel. "I am ordering an immediate injunction on the property. No work is to proceed. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for a criminal investigation into the probate handling and the title transfer. We are adjourned." The hallway outside the courtroom was chaos. Reporters from the local paper were shouting questions. Daniel grabbed my elbow and steered me toward a quiet alcove near the elevators. But we didn't make it. We were intercepted by Marcus Thorne and a team of 3 lawyers I hadn't seen before. They looked like sharks in expensive wool. "Ms. Brooks," the lead lawyer said. He was an older man with silver hair and a voice like oiled gravel. "Can we have a word?" "My client has nothing to say to you," Daniel said, stepping in front of me. "We have an offer," the lawyer said. He didn't look at Daniel. He looked straight at me. "A settlement. To end this today." I hesitated. Daniel looked at me, a warning in his eyes. But I nodded. "Speak," I said. The lawyer opened his briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "We are prepared to offer you a cash settlement of $2 million, he said. I blinked. $2 million? In addition?" he continued, his tone conversational, as if he were discussing the weather. "Hawthorne Ridge Properties owns a restored brownstone in Boston, specifically in the Back Bay. It is valued at $1.5 million. We will transfer the deed to you, free and clear, alongside the cash, $3.5 million in value. It was enough money to retire. It was enough money to never work again. It was enough money to buy 5 houses like Grandma's. And in exchange?" I asked. The lawyer smiled, a thin, tight expression. "In exchange, you will withdraw your complaint with prejudice. You will agree to seal the court file permanently. You will sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding the details of the transaction and the audio recordings. And you will transfer the property at 44 Ocean View Drive to my client immediately. They wanted to bury it. They were willing to pay a fortune to make sure the DA never saw the files, to make sure the judge's referral died on the vine. Take a moment," the lawyer said. "It is a very generous offer. It restores your inheritance and then some." He stepped back to let me talk to Daniel. "Gabriella," Daniel whispered, grabbing my shoulder. "Do you understand what this is? This is fear money. They are terrified. If the DA digs into this, Marcus Thorne goes to prison. The notary goes to prison. Maybe even the judge. It is a lot of money. Daniel," I said. My voice sounded hollow. "It is," he agreed. "It is life-changing money. And if you take it, you walk away. You win. You beat them." "Do I?" I asked. I looked down at the marble floor. I thought about the $3.5 million. I could travel. I could start my own business. I could be safe. But then I thought about the letter in the safe. My kindness has been turned into a weapon. If I took the money, I was selling the truth. I was letting them buy my silence just like they tried to buy Grandma's. I would be rich, but I would be part of the corruption. I would be just another person they paid off to look the other way while they stripped the town for parts. I looked up, across the hallway, near the water fountain. My mother was standing with Lauren. They were arguing. I walked over to them. Daniel followed close behind. Mom looked up. Her eyes were swollen. She looked 10 years older than she had at the funeral. "Gabriella," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, take the deal. Marcus told me what they offered. It is a fortune. You can have a good life. Is that what you want?" I asked. "You want me to take the money so this all goes away?" "Yes," Mom cried. She reached out and grabbed my hands. Her grip was desperate. "I just want it to stop. I can't take the scandal. Gabby, the police came to the house yesterday. They asked about the foundation. They asked about my accounts." I stared at her. "You knew." I said, "It wasn't a question." Mom froze. She looked down at our joined hands. I didn't know the details. She whispered, "I didn't know about the forgery. I swear. But you knew something was wrong." I said, "You knew Lauren didn't have the authority to sell that house so fast. You knew Grandma didn't have medical bills. And you looked the other way. I had to." Mom sobbed. "Lauren was in trouble. She came to me in the summer. She said she owed money to bad people. She said if she didn't get cash, they would hurt her. What was I supposed to do? She is my daughter. So you sacrificed your mother to save your daughter." I said. Mom pulled her hands away, covering her face. "I didn't think it would go this far. I thought they would just sell the house and nobody would notice. I didn't think you would come back and dig." I looked at Lauren. She was leaning against the wall, her arms crossed over her chest. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked numb. "Tell me the truth. Lauren," I said, "why me? Why did you forge my signature? You could have just forged Grandma's and claimed the will was lost. Why did you drag me into it?" Lauren looked at me. A slow, bitter smile spread across her face. "Because it was your house," she said. "What? Grandma told me," Lauren said. "In August, when I asked her to sign the papers, she told me. I can't sell it. Lauren, it belongs to Gabby. I promised it to Gabby." Lauren laughed. A sharp, jagged sound. "She never promised me anything. Gabby, I lived here. I took care of her. I drove her to every appointment. I cooked her meals. And all she talked about was you. Gabby is so smart. Gabby is doing so well in New York. Gabby is the special one." She pushed herself off the wall and stepped toward me. "I forged your signature because I wanted to take it from you," she hissed. "I wanted to sell your precious inheritance and use the money to fix my mistakes. I thought it was justice. I thought it was balancing the scales. It broke my heart. Not because I was surprised, but because it was so small. All that crime, all that destruction, all that betrayal. It wasn't about millions of dollars or real estate empires. It was about a little girl feeling second best. It is heartbreaking." "Lauren," I said softly, "I don't need your pity." She spat. "No," I said, "you need a lawyer." I turned back to the silver-haired attorney who was waiting with the check. I walked up to him. He smiled. Holding out the pen. "Sign here. Ms. Brooks. And it is all over." I took the pen. I looked at the check one last time. $2 million. Then I looked at Daniel. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. I remembered Grandma's voice on the tape. I did not do it. I wanted it for Gabby. I handed the pen back to the lawyer. "No," I said. The lawyer's smile vanished. "Excuse me? I am not signing," I said, "and I am not selling." "Ms. Brooks," he said, his voice turning cold. "If you walk away from this, we will litigate you into the ground. This will take 5 years. You will see nothing. The house will rot before you step foot in it." "I don't care," I said. I turned to Marcus Thorne, who was standing behind the lawyers, looking pale. "I am not keeping the file sealed. Mr. Thorne, I am giving everything to the district attorney, the audio, the video, the bank statements, the emails from the title company, everything. You will regret this," Marcus snarled. "You will lose everything." I smiled. It was the first time I had really smiled in 2 weeks. I already have what matters, I said. I walked away. Outside the courthouse, the air was crisp and cold. The sun was shining, bright and indifferent. Daniel walked beside me. He didn't say anything until we reached my car. You know he was right, Daniel said quietly. About the timeline. This isn't over. They will appeal. They will file motions. It will take years to get the title fully cleared and the criminal cases adjudicated. You are going to be coming back here for a long time. I looked up at the courthouse. I saw my mother and Lauren walking out the side door. Heads bowed, moving quickly toward their car. They looked like strangers. I know, I said. And the house, Daniel added. It is a wreck. The renovation crew destroyed the interior. It will cost hundreds of thousands to restore it. You rejected a fortune to keep a ruin. I opened my car door. It is not a ruin, Daniel. It is the truth. I got in. Daniel leaned in the window. So, what now? Now, I said, starting the engine. I go to Home Depot. I need to buy some locks. I drove out of the parking lot, past the news vans, past the lawyers in their expensive suits, past my family. I drove toward the ocean. I pulled into the driveway of 44 Ocean View Drive. The yellow paint was peeling. The porch was gone. The windows were boarded up. It looked broken. But as I walked up the cracked walkway, I saw something. The demolition crew had left the front door unlocked. I pushed it open. The hallway was stripped to the studs. The floor was covered in dust. But the light was the same. It poured in through the gaps in the boards, golden and heavy with dust motes dancing in the air. I walked to the center of the house. I stood there in the silence. I closed my eyes. It will be yours, Gabriella. I took a deep breath of the salty air. I was alone. I was broke. My family was destroyed, but the house was mine. And for the first time in a long time, the silence wasn't empty. It was peaceful. Thank you for listening to this story. We walked a long, dark road with Gabriella, from the shock of betrayal to the hard-won peace of the truth. It is a story about how money can poison blood, and how the hardest battles are often fought against the people we are supposed to trust the most. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Have you ever had to choose between peace and truth in your own life? Please share your thoughts in the comments below in English. I read every single one, and if you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe to Revenge Stories. We have many more tales of justice, betrayal, and redemption waiting for you. Until next time, keep your eyes open and trust your instincts.